Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack some really compelling ideas and research, aiming to give you the clearest, most insightful understanding possible. Today, we're diving into something that's, well, truly fundamental, but it often just goes unnoticed. We're talking about the hidden, often incredibly powerful influence of everyday rituals on our lives. So, our mission for this deep dive, it's really to explore what rituals truly are. How do they, gracefully diverge from just plain routine? Why do they matter so profoundly in the human experience? And maybe most importantly, how can you, the listener, consciously harness their power? Power to shape your time, find deeper meaning, and maybe navigate life's inevitable transitions with a bit more grace. We're drawing insights from the brilliant work of psychological anthropologist Brad Shore, including his key book, The Hidden Powers of Ritual, and also the practical wisdom of mindfulness advocate Nina Grunewald.
That's right. And it's interesting because so much of our lives can feel dictated by these huge forces beyond our control,
Hmm.
economic, political, physiological, even ecological forces. But what's truly surprising is Bradshaw's conclusion after a whole career looking into this. He basically says that ritual is, and I'm quoting here, perhaps the most powerful tool in the human toolkit that is largely under local control.
Under local control. That's fascinating.
Exactly. And we're going to explore precisely how this local control can transform your experience and maybe give you back a profound sense of agency.
Okay, let's start with the basics then. We often throw around ritual and routine almost interchangeably, don't we? But you mentioned Shore makes a really important distinction. How does he define them? What really sets them apart?
Yeah, that's absolutely crucial to get clear on first. Shore explains that routines are essentially ordinary behaviors, things we repeat until they basically become automated action patterns. They're incredibly efficient, right? They simplify our lives because they offload complex actions from our active working memory.
Like making coffee in the morning without thinking.
Exactly. Or how you might clean the house. It's, as he puts it, behavior on automatic pilot.
Hmm.
You often do it without much conscious thought at all. But then, and here's the key difference, once those acts have kind of hardened into a fixed routine, they might keep evolving. They start taking on symbolic significance, adding layers and layers of meaning. Shore calls this transformation ritualization. So
Ritualization.
you
Okay.
could think of rituals as routines that have picked up a significant symbolic load.
Right, that symbolic load. That makes sense.
And Nina Grunewald adds a really nice perspective here, too. She points out that while habits or routines are done automatically and kind of carry you through the day without much thought,
Hmm.
rituals demand something more. They require presence and intention.
Presence and intention. Got it.
They're sort of designed to pull you out of those automatic everyday activities,
Hmm.
to infuse meaning into what you're doing. They can even connect you to something larger, a
Mm.
sense of meaning in life or even spirituality. And that's true even if you don't consider yourself religious.
That's such a crucial distinction, isn't it? The efficiency versus the meaning. I'm wondering though, does that line ever blur? Like, can a routine accidentally become a ritual without us really meaning it to, or is it always a conscious kind of shift?
That's a great question. Um, I think it's often a conscious shift, but the real power lies in that potential, you see. A routine becomes a ritual when we consciously decide to imbue it with that intention, with that symbolic weight. It's really about being present with the action
Yeah.
rather than just, going through the motions. So while they definitely complement each other, routines handle the efficiency, rituals provide the meaning. It's that conscious engagement that truly elevates a routine into a ritual.
It's interesting. You often find that people who initially dismiss an idea end up understanding it most deeply. And Bradshaw own journey into ritual sounds like a perfect example of that. You said he initially rolled his eyes, even at his own bar mitzvah.
He did. Yeah, his story is quite telling. Ritual really caught up with him years later. This was when he was a Peace Corps teacher living in a really remote Samoan village. He found that life there was just completely permeated by rituals.
Right.
Everything from the big, obvious big hour ceremonies like chiefly installations and funerals
Mm.
to the really subtle, everyday interactions. Specific ways of greeting people, leave-taking rituals, even special forms of like ritualized language.
Yeah.
And initially he felt it was all very artificial, like a kind of social performance.
Right. Not authentic somehow.
Exactly. But living there, gradually, he started to understand what he called the hidden wisdom of all this formality. He realized these rituals weren't actually about being inauthentic at all. They were a really powerful way of uh, tuning social relationships, keeping them in good form, maintaining harmony and connection within the whole community. It was a huge shift in perspective for him. It really opened his eyes.
Wow. And from that incredibly immersive experience, he then brought that perspective back to American life, specifically when he led that center at Emory University. Mariel, was it? The Center for Myth and Ritual in American Life.
That's right, Mario. He led it for a decade, and the studies that came out of it, which often focused on middle-class Southern families, yielded some really remarkable insights into our own culture. They learned about the immense power rituals and stories have in creating distinctive family lives and also strong community ties. And what was interesting was that each family uniquely orchestrated their own practices, yet the underlying power was consistent.
So what kind of things did they observe?
Well, for instance, they looked at the symbolic ownership of space within homes. Kitchens often being seen as mom spaces, workshops, or garages, as dad spaces, kids carving out their own hideouts as they grow up.
I recognize that.
Yeah. And this wasn't just about the physical layout, it was about the shared meaning and the identity tied to those specific places within the home. They also noted something interesting about American society, how mobile we tend to be. The family home is often temporary, right? Kids are, in many ways, groomed from a young age to eventually leave the nest.
Sure.
And this cycle, Shore argues, leads to this widespread American nostalgia we have for home and family. It's deeply tied to that very pattern of dispersal and return, which is why some of our most powerful American rituals are actually homecomings.
Like Thanksgiving or Christmas.
Exactly. Times when a dispersed family is sort of magically reinstated, as he put it, around a shared table, symbolically rebuilding that connection. It led Shore to this really profound conclusion. While families make rituals, it is equally true that our rituals make our families.
Wow. Our rituals make our families. That's a beautiful thought. It suggests rituals aren't just add-ons. They're fundamental to who we are as a group.
Okay, so some powers of ritual, like maybe reducing anxiety, might feel somewhat familiar to people. But Spore's work highlights some less obvious ones that sound quite thought-provoking. Could you elaborate on a couple of those?
Absolutely. There are two in particular that really stand out among the less obvious powers Bradshaw discusses. The first one is how rituals create rhythm and structure time. This is fascinating. As humans, we operate at many different rhythms all at once. We have our biological clocks, our organ pulses, respiration, even cellular vibration.
Things we're not even aware of most of the time.
Right, exactly, or not conscious of most of them. But rituals become a primary way we mark time in our conscious lives. They give our days, our months, our years a predictable shape and pulse. A rhythm. Shore calls rituals a potent general tool for creating and manipulating the tempos of our lives. And they offer both rhythmic regularity and adaptability. It's a kind of remarkable duality. Regularity and adaptability. How so?
Well, they provide a predictable beat, like weekly services or annual holidays, which give structure. But we can also create rituals to mark new transitions or adapt to changing circumstances. As Shore nicely puts it, with ritual, we can both keep time and keep up with time. It's how we create order and meaning in what can feel like a relentless flow of moments.
Keeping time and keeping up with time. I like that. Okay, what's the second, less obvious power?
The other really unexpected power he highlights, and he actually coined a unique term for it, is agency reversal.
Agency reversal, what does that mean?
It's where, as Shore describes it, the power of the rhythmic action reverses the experience of who's doing the action. He gives the example of dancers. They might begin feeling like they're doing the dancing, right? But as the intensity builds, as they get lost in the rhythm, it can feel like the dance starts performing the dancer.
The dance performs the dancers.
Nah.
Like getting lost in the music.
Exactly. You see this in intense sports, too. It's often described as being in the zone or achieving flow, that state where you're just completely absorbed, acting almost automatically, but with peak performance.
That idea of the dance performing the dancer is quite profound. I'm trying to wrap my head around that. So it's almost like the ritual itself takes over, rather than us being solely in control. Does Shore talk about whether there are any downsides to that feeling, like losing control, or how we ensure it stays positive?
That's a really good question. While maybe extreme cases could potentially lead to a trance-like state where the performer feels completely carried away, which, could have downsides if not managed well. Shore suggests that all ritual actually conveys some degree of this agency reversal, and generally, it's experienced as a positive, often transformative state. It's actually what creates really powerful bonding experiences. Think about military drills or large communal celebrations that shared rhythmic action fosters connection. And in religious contexts, for instance, this feeling can be interpreted as direct contact with a transcendent agent, a deeply meaningful spiritual connection. So it's less about losing control in a negative way and maybe more about transcending the everyday self and connecting to something larger, something shared through that rhythmic action.
Right, transcending the self. That provides a clearer perspective of things.
Okay, so if rituals are this powerful, holding these hidden dimensions, what does this all mean for you, the listener? How can we consciously harness these hidden powers in our own lives, without necessarily having to join a remote Samoan village?
Well, it really circles back to that surprising conclusion from Brad Shore we mentioned earlier. Ritual is perhaps the most powerful tool in the human toolkit that is largely under local control. Despite feeling like so much is beyond our influence day to day, we actually have this remarkable capacity, this control over shaping our time and our experience through ritual. So it gives us agency back.
Precisely. And he emphasizes that for new families, for instance, there's almost this kind of obligation, his word, to consciously negotiate and create their own distinctive patterns of family rituals. Because these practices, these repeated meaningful actions, are what powerfully shape children's sense of identity and their future memories, what they'll look back on. As Shore puts it, think about it. Something done once is just an act. Done twice, it is a repeat. But beyond that lies the endless expanse of ritual. And that ultimately leads to those foundational statements like, this is who we are, this is what our family does.
And these gatherings don't have to be in person, right?
Absolutely not. That's a
Right,
key point, especially today. Ritual gatherings can definitely happen virtually. Physical distance doesn't have to be an impediment to building and maintaining these vital connections through shared, meaningful actions.
That's really important.
And then beyond families, Shore talks about the miraculous powers of individual rituals, how they can provide peace and comfort when you're facing sorrow or loneliness or just everyday stress. He uses a simple example of an evening cup of tea. It could transform from just, a cup of tea
Yeah, just a drink.
into my cup of tea, something deeply personal, imbued with intention and presence. When you engage with it mindfully, he says, it becomes a potent, stabilizing agent. A simple salve for a stressful time just requires that mindfulness.
A potent stabilizing agent. I love that phrasing. And this is where Nina Grunewald comes in, right? With really specific, actionable examples of how to do this, how to introduce these celebratory rituals into daily life.
Exactly. Nina provides some wonderful practical frameworks.
Huh.
For example, she talks about transforming her pre-yoga routine into a proper ritual. It's not just rolling out the mat. It's about creating a symbolic space, engaging her senses. So yeah, she rolls out the mat, takes a moment for some warm water, maybe lights a candle, places a favorite crystal like rose quartz for her, maybe draws a manifestation card, uses a calming essential oil roll-on.
So small intentional actions.
Yes. Each little element is chosen deliberately to shift her mindset, to bring presence. It turns what could be a routine setup into a mindful preparation. The point is, you can adopt this same principle. You just choose objects or actions that feel sacred and intentional to you, maybe writing down an intention or a moment of silent gratitude.
Makes sense. What else?
Well, Nina also highlights how powerful rituals can be for personal transformation. She shares her birthday practice, it's a really potent symbolic act of intention setting and release. She gets a big piece of paper, her favorite pen. She writes down what she wants to be or embrace in the coming year, and then separately what she wants to let go of. Then with a candle and a bowl and water nearby for safety, of course she carefully cuts out the let go of pieces and physically burns them. It's a tangible act. It helps solidify that mental shift, helps her feel like she's truly manifesting the change she wants to see.
That sounds really powerful, actually, that physical act of burning.
It can be. And bedtime is another huge area for ritual, obviously, because it's such a critical transition in the day. Nina shares an example from someone named Lauren first.
Right.
She ceremoniously puts her computer to sleep at 9 p.m. sharp. That's the ritual boundary. Then she shifts into calming activities, maybe tidying, watering plants, sewing, reading. Then she makes peppermint tea for herself and her husband, and they sit and drink it together to prepare for bed, a shared winding down.
That sounds lovely. And Nina has her own detailed version.
Oh yes, Nina's own bedtime ritual is quite detailed. It starts with choosing a special cut for her tea, turning on the kettle. While it boils, she tidies the bed, fluffs pillows. She specifically turns on a bedside lamp and turns off the main ceiling light, using lowered light to consciously set a calmer mood. Then her bathroom routine isn't just functional. She uses carefully chosen products, a bamboo toothbrush, plastic-free bamboo charcoal floss, things that make her happy just using them, a specific washcloth, nice Aesop products. It turns basic skincare into, as she says, an experience and a ritual.
Making the mundane meaningful.
Exactly. And finally, she cuddles into bed to read a physical book for about an hour. That helps wind down her thoughts, become present, detached from screens.
That physical book part feels key too.
It really does. And one more great example from Nina transitioning from work mode to home mode. This is especially crucial now. So many people work from home, right? The lines blur. So she has a ritual to avoid just diving straight into chores or staying mentally at work when she finishes her workday. She soaks a washcloth in hot water with some calming essential oils, lavender maybe. Then she lies down on the sofa with a glass of water, places the warm, damp cloth over her face or eyes, sets a timer for just 10 minutes, and focuses on her breath, maybe softens her gaze. It's a dedicated pause to help slow down those racing thoughts and consciously, truly arrive home, shifting into a different mental space before engaging with the evening.
Just 10 minutes, but what a difference that could make. These examples really drive home the principle, don't they? It's not just what you do, but the mindset, the intention you bring to it.
Precisely. And Nina Grunewald sums up why bothering to introduce these rituals is so incredibly powerful. She says they help you be present. They help you focus and ground yourself, which is especially vital in challenging or stressful times. They create deeper meaning in everyday life. They can increase connection, whether that's to spirituality or nature or your community. They guide you through transitions, big and small. They help you deal with grief and sorrow. They stabilize you, provide a sense of security, reduce anxiety. And ultimately, she says, they just increase happiness. They really are an accessible pathway to a richer, more meaningful life experience.
That's quite a list of benefits from something as simple as, say, mindfully making tea. And crucially, Nina also emphasizes, and this feels important, it's not about perfection, right?
Not at all. That's a key takeaway from her. It's okay if your ritual isn't exactly the same every single time, or if you forget a step or even miss a day. The key is just to be gentle with yourself. It's the intention and the return to the practice that matters.
Be gentle with yourself. Good advice for anything, really. So there you have it. We've explored this profound yet remarkably accessible power of rituals, how they shape our lives, from our personal well-being and sense of agency right through to our family identity, and even our very experience of time itself. It really is a hidden force, but one we all have at our fingertips.
Absolutely. And maybe a final thought to leave you with. Given how rituals can so silently yet powerfully shape our identity, our family life, our experience of time and reality, what small intentional ritual will you begin to cultivate today? Something to anchor yourself, create deeper meaning, or perhaps navigate a transition that's happening in your own life right now?
That's definitely something to reflect on. Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive.